Today's panel basically it's on current and future expectations of enterprise architecture practice, right? So to start, I would like basically for the panel to introduce themselves, their background and expertise in the area. And from that point, I will ask a couple of questions, and I want this to be as interactive as possible, so I speak less, because you're better professionals than me in this area. Is that fine? Okay, I know that it's hard, it's after lunch, it's going to be food coma moment, but I hope we can prevail this. Okay, let's start. Stefan, would you like to, you already did this, but...
Okay, my name is Stefan Valene. I'm a senior manager within Scania, not within Umeå Universitet. And my responsibility is within advanced analytics, it is within BI, data warehouse, data lake, information management. That's basically it. That's what I do. And I run we have something we call an information management journey within Scania, which is about treating information as an asset from a lot of different perspectives, and I'm running that. So that's my role.
All right, my name's Greg Hanson. I work for Informatica. I've been with Informatica 15 years, which is a long time, but in that time I've had solution architect roles and various different roles within Informatica. I currently run our EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa sales specialist team, which are domain experts for things like integration cloud, master data management, data security, archiving, and data as a service. So that's me.
And Niclas Johansson from IKEA. I'm a business architect in the business intelligence area, and I have a strategic vision there and have to make sure that all the projects follow that vision in their execution. I've been in 20 years in the business intelligence business and run into many problems, and I hope we won't do the same at IKEA.
Perfect. So this morning we started with basically presenting some of the drivers why we need to be data-driven, and we had like a lot of buzzwords like machine learning, artificial intelligence, everything is going to the end of the world and all these things. But I think the important part is in this panel, basically what I would like to ask as a start is how do we make sense out of this noise? The topic of the stage actually that we have today is future-enabled enterprise architecture. So it's not only basically how do we face the problems and challenges that we have today, but how do we also ensure that the enterprise architecture that we have right now is going to withstand the new trends that are coming, because they're changing all the time. Last year there was like 975 data scientists on LinkedIn search. This year is 115,000, right? Machine learning is on the reach. Everybody's talking about automation. So what does this actually mean for organizations like yourself, right?
You want me to start with that? Just looking at me. Okay, so how do we make sense of the noise? One of the things I would say, as talking to our customers, and is simplification. I think one of the things that's happened over the last few years, there's been a lot of disruptors in the industry, new technology coming along. I mentioned blockchain a number of times earlier on in the conversation, but over the last 5 years, there's been other things like the adoption of cloud. Then you've got flavors of Hadoop, like Hortonworks, which are one of the partners outside. And that's introduced a lot of new technology. And one of the things I've seen is a proliferation of people adopting things like open source technology for many projects. And that's been a competitive fit for us as a vendor. Why do you want to use open source and all these types of tools that are available, or do you want to use a kind of platform-based approach? I think what I would say is into the future, one of the things that we're seeing coming back to us now is once you go down that route, whilst you may be able to get value from individual projects or a quicker delivery for an initial delivery, over a longer period of time, that is not as effective. And when you start to think about some of the pressures that you're going to be under from a regulatory perspective, you're going to need to approach some of those things from a consolidated strategy, but also I would advocate a platform-based approach to do that. Your choice of vendor is down to you, but I think that is the way forward. GDPR is on the horizon for all of us. I think specifically those with customer data, it'll be very difficult to achieve that if you've got a proliferation of different types of technologies, skills and platforms, and because it'll be introduce more complexity and fragmentation. So one key word to make sense of all the noise, I would say, is simplify where you can. And the adoption of artificial intelligence as well will further simplify that, because it will accelerate what you can do. So look for platforms, look for AI that will help you accelerate your journey. And the last statement that I made in my opening speech was around, you've got to be brave. We're going to have to make some choices as organizations. And if we don't disrupt ourselves and change what we're doing, we can't expect that we're still going to be in the same position we are now in 5 years. Because with things like blockchain, the guy who's sat in a garage somewhere in the downtown Stockholm is going to be able to compete with the likes of SEB and so on. And that's a reality moving forward. So we need to think about that right now and prepare ourselves for the future.
I would say that large companies like Scania at least have a tradition of being quite slow in decisions that we think are huge. And we need to change that, because the technique is coming really, really fast, and you have to try. You have to bring in different techniques and see what they're good at, what they're not good at, and make those decisions a lot faster. We are a bit dependent of Volkswagen, who owns us. And I would say there you see this kind of problem. They think that they have a long time to make decisions, but they don't. So if the decision has taken 1.5 years, quite usually within Volkswagen, then the decision is really old. So that's a mindset. I think we need to act a lot faster, take the decisions faster, and try and be able to fail. And we have to make the failure, be a part of a good learning curve. That's really important.
Yeah, I agree. What we know is that tomorrow will not look as today. And I think we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, because everything will be driven by the customer more in the future. Currently, all the big organizations are actually asking themselves, what do we want to sell to the customer, instead of asking, what does the customer want to buy from us? And that is quite a big shift. And I think we have to do that, because, as you mentioned, there are lots of vendors with lots of good products, definitely. Which one should we choose? Yeah, depends.
Informatica.
So I think we have to go and see what's our core business, and what processor do we have, and then use the technology as an enabler to get there. So I think we have more of a mindset shift and issue rather than technology.
Anybody wants to add something on this, or a question?
If you have a whole lot of enablers in any company or enterprise, but the lack of mindset is only preventing.
Yeah.
So the mindset is my message.
Yes.
I agree. Can I comment that? I think that it's also it's a mindset of IT of being able to be flexible, but it's also the fact that the whole business need to acknowledge the new opportunities that we are bringing in with technology, and that is moving really slow. So that's something that at least we put a lot of effort into, making the business aware of what possibilities is actually right here, right now, not in the future. We can do it, to bring out the examples and to make sure that people are aware of the possibilities. Because
And sometimes we just think of technology would solve everything. So technology is only an enabler.
of course,
We should begin with ourselves and our mindset at the first place, and the organization, of course.
I think the urgency needs to change in a lot of large organisations, to your point. I think the urgency will change. I mean, it's been driven by regulation and things like that we're going to have to deal with. But, one of the things that I always say is that take a look at your own organisations, and do they really value or understand the value of data, as we talked about earlier on this morning throughout a number of different sessions. I think until we get to that point where the business understands and sees data as valuable as it sees many other assets like a building or whatever, then that's the cultural tipping point that will really drive the level of investment and focus that we have on architecture and data management, I think. And with it should come an organisation. We had a great presentation from Bank of Ireland a couple of days ago at a different show that I was at. He's Chief Digital Officer, a guy called Barry Green. You can look at him on the web and so on. But he had a really good story around organisationally how the bank had to change in order, the mindset as you put it, in order for them to start to be successful on the journey towards GDPR compliancy in his presentation. But there's quite a lot of politics out there as well that hamper it. And that's why we need to get this type of topic up to the highest possible level to make sure that those politics don't get in the way. Because otherwise, they will. And we'll have a stalemate and we'll get disrupted.
So, Stefan actually pointed out on this about the story how he had this pitch that you were driving towards the senior management, and what we see in the service that we get after the conferences is actually lack of vision, and sponsorship from senior management is the highest hinder, basically stopping organization moving forward, right? But to break a bit, because we started looking at how to fix this, how to clear this noise out there. Let's start a little bit with the challenges, right? First, because every single one of us has a challenge. So what the panel would say are the, let's say, 3 key challenges usually, organizations face when they want to reorganize their enterprise architecture towards the needs of the business and new analytics and data science.
I can start. The challenge that Scania is in right now is that we put a lot of focus into information. And top management is really into the advanced analytics, data science, and that affects 50 or so people, not more than that. And the rest of the organization is screaming to get data, and the challenge to balance this and to be successful in both those areas is a place where we are, at least. We bring in a lot of data into a Hadoop cluster, and the data scientist is perfectly happy. But to share this within Scania is a real challenge for us right now.
I think it is in all organizations, silos, data silos or system application silos. Because as you say, everybody wants data, but no one is giving data away. And even if they are, their people does not have time to support other systems with data.
I'll just give you an example from our side. Rather than talking about one of our customers, I'll talk about us as an organisation, Informatica. I'll just give you how software vendors work and what's the disruption in our industry as a software vendor, which would apply to all the guys out there. Internally, we had a new CIO that came on board a couple of years ago. And just like many of you, we have the pressure of our digital transformation journey. Because if you think about the way that our marketplace is changing, we have the potential to be disrupted as well. So our threat, if you like, is we've built our business so far on selling to the likes of Scania and SEB and so on and so on. These enterprise large organizations, we've built our business over 23 years in that. The future will still be you will sell to enterprise clients, but increasingly the scale that you'll get will be lots and lots and more small to medium sized enterprises. And the way that you need to deal with them is much more of in a digital manner. So we are shifting our business, and in parallel to the way that we interact, it's also the way that we sell as well. So in our marketplace, one of the big disruptions for software companies is they move from a different license model. So you buy in a different way. You used to buy big ticket items and pay maintenance on an annual basis. Now you buy lower capex, you buy in a subscription format, and you can turn on and turn off that subscription. For me, that is a massive disruptor to me. and I run 6 business lines within Informatica. The reason why that's a massive disruptor is the good news from your perspective is we have got to be a lot more responsive to you, because in the subscription world where you can turn us off and you haven't spent £10 million on or krona or whatever on a software solution, a big ticket item that you're wedded to because you've made that commitment, you've made a small commitment and the pressure is on us to keep you happy over time. That's a massive disruption to my business, because in the back end, it fundamentally changes the way that we do business. And much more it moves from a big ticket item to a customer success organization where we have people now with that job title that didn't exist 3 years ago. And in the back end, we're having to change all of our billing systems, our CRM systems to support this new model. So there's a really good, our CIO does a great pitch around what we call internally our project road trip, which is our journey to cloud, digital transformation journey, which talks about all our back-end systems. And well, our nirvana is to get to that point where we can deal with micropayments. So rather than deal with, a typical software company might do, 70 large transactions a quarter or something. But in the future, that will be 1,000 micropayments. Someone with a credit card, someone with bitcoins, however that works. It's fundamentally a different way of doing business, and we need to shift ourselves, as you will, to kind of cope with that disruption in your own industries, just like we do. That's just a good example from us.
Does anybody want to share something from their side so we can make this panel a little bit more practical in terms of what is the core challenges that you guys face? Is it different in every organization, or is it the same? How do you look at enterprise architecture?
One of the big challenges is, and always have been, the communication. Sometimes you have all the staff required, talents, people, competencies in place, but they don't talk to each other. And everyone just try to push the things away from himself or herself. And try, I have done this, but they won't listen. So the communication is the big challenge in any enterprise. I don't believe that our problem is the technology. I'm quite sure that most of us know the technology and what suits our business, because we come from very different areas. We are very different businesses. I work at ICA. I sell milk. It's quite different from Informatica. So we have different challenges, but information and the communication, governance, very important. I see it.
Yeah, is there anyone in the room who have found a solution regarding like bridging the gap between different functions, business and IT? Now we have data science in the middle of this. Nobody is basically, they're the wizards with the flip-flops and etc., right? Nobody speaks with them either. Has anybody found like some kind of a solution? Governance is one of the things, right? But have anybody found any type of a solution that actually works to bring the business and the IT side and then the middle, of course, or the senior management on board on this?
I think that we do actually, and thanks to one individual, and that's our CEO, because he's really into this area and really sees the value of information and sees the possibilities. And with the help of him, we have managed to get one initiative to sort this out, to get rid of those silos, and then we have added collaboration between all different silos who were earlier not talking to each other, but now they are. And I would say that the key factor is trust. And to gain trust, you will have to both point out a direction. This is where we're heading. You have to picture that, so it sounds really good. And you also have to prove that you have taken the first steps towards that vision, that you seize the next steps which are coming. Make them aware about that we are getting there. So I would say that there is of course, it's always easier to have one really big initiatives than a lot of small which compete with each other. But if you have that, make sure that everyone have a positive view of it. I very seldom go for the approach that it's really tough. We have all of these problems because people stop listening. Give the positive view. See what's this and this is in place. We have a challenge here, but we'll solve it together, and so on. So positive trust. I think that's.
And in order to reach them, you should believe in yourself in the very beginning and your vision.
Yeah.
You're fortunate enough to have a CIO that is well aware of the situation and where the future is heading. But if you're in a situation where there's a lack of urgency in the management team around this area, because I haven't seen any CIOs apart from those who are vendors, or probably on the IT side maybe, but not on the sort of manufacturing companies or anything like this in these forums. So, have you any experience in that area?
The difficulty with these events, because it's basically, you know, if I do a CIO event, okay, it will be only CIO events, CIO people inside, because those people are basically want to hear what is on their agenda in some other organization, right? And they motivate themselves. It's the same here. You are all peers. We have some CEOs, basically speaking. Ingo was there. Joran Shordell later on is speaking in this stage as well. So there are some examples, but you are completely right, because it doesn't mix with each other. The problem is the communication like this. I cannot put business and technical people in this room, and I cannot put middle management and senior management in this room. And the reason is that not that I would not like to, they're just not there. No.
But yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that you can do is reference other companies. You need to find a good reference for your own vertical. So, I mean, one of the examples that I was talking about earlier on was that GE Aviation things. The GE Aviation story, if you're a manufacturing organisation, is an interesting one to look at. There's some really nice quotes that they have as part of their journey towards digitization, their digital journey. And one of the things that's a famous quote, which you may or may not have heard, is the CEO at the time said, "I went to bed a manufacturing company and I woke up a software company." Right, which fundamentally was that mind shift that you were saying. He realised that the way that their organisation was going to compete and differentiate was actually all around technology and the use of data, rather than what they were known for, which was making light bulbs and aircraft engines. So the shift changed. So reference cell, I would say. But the other thing is be brave as well, because I think you've got the knowledge to go and challenge. Challenge with examples of here's what our differentiators, here's what the threat is. Be brave, challenge, and try and disrupt your own organisation, because ultimately it's going to be you that benefits in the long term, either you personally from a fantastic new job or the organisation by taking a market advantage. So I'd encourage you to do that.
I would go for value on a really high level, because it is not hard to Google yourself onto different areas of your company and what you could benefit out of the new techniques like process automation or advanced analytics. And then you could have a presentation which shows that if we would be a lot better than we are, as these are some examples, our EBIT would actually change from 10 to 15%. Then they listen. Of course, they have to. And then make them aware about we can have either you can fix some kind of trip for the executive to meet other executives which has done similar journeys, and if you think that's hard, which I would think would be hard, you could go to one of the consultant firms, because they have the contacts. That's actually what our CEO did. He went to McKinsey, and they fixed one of these trips to Silicon Valley with the whole executive, which definitely paid off. So go for really high value, because it will change the EBIT. It has the ability to change the EBIT, and that talks.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Maybe we can turn a little bit more towards how enterprise architecture is. This is what we started with, right? How enterprise architecture should look like, and how do we prepare for future as well, right? We discussed silo approaches and etc. Now we're gonna have IoT is gonna bridge the market with a multi type of data coming in as well, right? So how enterprise architecture will look like or should look like at this point of time, so it can withstand all these new challenges and trends. I think it's a repetition of the same, but it's a little bit more in focus of how do you envision.
Enterprise architecture is hard. My view of enterprise architecture is some kind of overall map, how this all fits together. It used to be a lot about how all the applications are, what functionality is within what application, and that it still is for me. For me, this journey is about how do we fit into that landscape, but it's totally brings in new technique which is totally different from what the legacy is using, and the challenge of bringing in all the new techniques like the streaming platforms and the big data platforms. Some of the parts is obvious, just bring the data into our place and create the streams, but how to shift that landscape to something new, and that's really hard. I don't see that picture. But that's my view, at least.
Yeah, I agree with your view as well. It's hard to see how we go from one status to another. I think we have pretty clear vision where we want to be. We want to talk about capabilities. We want to do this and that. We know that it will be cloud-based. But how to get from where we are right now, where we have all these silos, and this between, I think we are between right now, but we don't know how to handle it, and that's really hard.
The only other thing I'd add to that is if you think about the future and whether or not, and the role of an enterprise architect, isn't there now an opportunity to change from the inside out? And in his enterprise architecture, what we should be focusing on? Because for me, when I used to be a solution architect and stuff, it was quite technology oriented in terms of systems, process, connectivity. But what about the data? Because as we talked about, the value is actually in the data. Where are the data architects in our business? So maybe we need to change and have a different philosophy and approach it from a data perspective, because that's where the value is. And then the technology underneath, whatever, I still advocate a platform approach, but whatever your platform of choice or whatever, that's, I think, secondary. We start with the data, in my opinion. So if I was to say architecturally what will change, that potentially will. And the only thing I'd add to that as well is, to your point around value, that's where the value is as well. Because technology is often seen just as an enabler or a cost, whereas data is an asset. And if you look at some of the Forbes magazines and things like that, you can actually tie data to business value as well. If you're a Fortune 1000 company and you increase the accessibility of data by 10%, it puts $65 million net benefit to your company. So your point about value, that's the type of link. That's where data architecture could transform the way that we approach these types of initiatives.
I could use the analogy of human being to be able to function correctly. He or she needs a functioning heart and blood and the vessels. Blood is the data. And you could take samples from everywhere from the body. It's the same. One version of the truth. Yes. You couldn't see any different values when you take samples. So data is very important. And the machinery that derives this data in a good way is the heart. Very important as well.
And most people will work with the toolbox rather than one single system. So definitely the data should be more in the center for everything we do, and then use different tools to achieve what we want to do or to get the answers on our questions.
So to summarize, sponsorship of senior management, better vision, yes, better approach to enterprise architecture from a data point of view, right? And talk to each other, right? Bridging the gap between the functions. That would be the learning case, at least for me. I think that we are in a very good position right now where we have data governance as a driver for senior management to listen. It's 4% of the global revenue. How much basically companies invest in the IT department? Usually it's up to 6.5%, right? So imagine if something goes wrong, 4%, where is this budget going to come from? Somebody needs to lose in this. So the driver is there. And they will listen to this because there is a lot of money. Yeah? So big applause for the panel for now, and let's move to the roundtables, yes?